energized into activity. He rushed to waken other members of the outpost. When he got back, the signals continued for a minute and stopped altogether. But they were recorded on tape, with the instrument readings that had been made during their duration. The staff man played the tape back for his companions. They felt as he did. These were signals from space where man had never been. They had listened to the first message ever to reach mankind from the illimitable emptiness between the stars and planets. Man was not alone. Man was no longer isolated. The staff of the tracking station was very much upset. Most of the men were white-faced by the time the taped message had been replayed through to its end. They were frightened. Considering everything, they had every reason to be. The second pickup was in Darjeeling, in northern India. The Indian government was then passing through one of its periods of enthusiastic interest in science. It had set up a satellite observation post in a former British cavalry stable on the outskirts of the town. The acting head of the observing staff happened to hear the second broadcast to reach Earth. It arrived some 79 minutes after the first reception, and it was picked up by two stations, Kahlua and Darjeeling. The Darjeeling observer was incredulous at what he heard. 5 repetitions of the same sequence of flute-like notes. After each pause, when it seemed that the signals had stopped before they actually did so, the reception was exactly the same as the one before. It was inconceivable that such a succession of sounds, lasting a full minute, could be exactly repeated by any natural chain of events. 5 repetitions were out of the question. The notes were signals. They were a communication which was repeated to be sure it was received. The third broadcast was heard in Lebanon in addition to Kahlua and Darjeeling. Reception in all 3 places was simultaneous. A signal from a nearby satellite could not possibly have been picked up so far around the Earth's curvature. The widening of the area of reception, too, proved that there was no new satellite aloft with an orbit period of exactly 24 hours, so that it hung motionless in the sky relative to Earth. Tracking observations, in fact, showed the source of the signals to move westward as time passed, with the apparent motion of a star. No satellite of Earth could possibly exist with such an orbit unless it was close enough to show a detectable parallax. This did not. A French station picked up the next batch of plaintive sounds. Kahlua, Darjeeling, and Lebanon still received. By the time the next signal was due, Croydon, in England, had its giant radar telescope trained on the part of the sky from which all the tracking stations agreed the signals came. Croydon painstakingly made observations during 4 79-minute intervals and 4 5-minute receptions of the fluting noises. It reported that there was a source of artificial signals at an extremely great distance, position right ascension so-and-so, declination such-and-such. The signals began every 79 minutes. They could be heard by any receiving instrument capable of handling the microwave frequency involved. The broadcast was extremely broadband. It covered more than 2 octaves, and sharp tuning was not necessary. A man-made signal would have been confined to as narrow a waveband as possible, to save power for one reason, so it could not be imagined that the signal was anything but artificial. Yet no Earth science could have sent a transmitter out so far. When sunrise arrived at the tracking station on Kahlua, it ceased to receive from space. On the other hand, tracking stations in the United States, the Antilles, and South America began to pick up the cryptic sounds. The first released news of the happening was broadcast in the United States. In the South Pacific and India and the Near East and Europe, the whole matter seemed too improbable for the notification of the public. News pressure in the United States, though, is very great. Here, the news rated broadcast and got it. That was why Joe Burke did not happen to complete the business for which he'd taken Sandy Lunn to a suitable romantic spot. She was his secretary and the only permanent employee in the highly individual business he'd begun and operated. He'd known her all his life, and it seemed to him that for most of it he'd wanted to marry her.